Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial. We're going to be painting a pink rose in a dark vase. We can add reflective light and carve out a few petals in the shadow. Now when I have the direct light, I can start bouncing this light back into the shadow. So right here, the light from this petal is coming to this. Make sure that when you put your reflective light, your shadow doesn't disappear. Reflective light is also a flow from more to less as it moves. There is another reflective light coming from this light into the beginning of this petal. So that's now would be a way to separate one petal from another. And also, because we are lightening this, we softening the edge of this cup without really touching the edge physically. We're lessening the contrast and therefore the edge becomes softer. We're going to put a little bit more reflective light on the top of that petal. And then we're going to put just a little bit of reflective light inside of that rose. I'll use a warmer temperature to make sure that whatever light I'm putting, it's going to stay inside of the shadow because of its temperature. And then as it comes to a more of a single petals, lesser petals overlapping, it becomes even lighter and a little cooler. So here you can put it more violet, and even when you get to the single petal, you can lighten up even more. So what happens to the direct light? Because the petals are not opaque, they're going to transmit the light inside. And so transmitted light becomes a warmer light. So we added some warmer light. And in this side of the rose, the number of petals that are overlapping on the edge of the rose becomes lesser and lesser. So they become more and more transparent. So that's why there is a lesser saturation here. And your darkest darks are really just deep inside. Now we can start dividing, creating some petals on a light here. So I can take color and just indicate a cast shadow, taking this cast shadow a little bit further across. I will take a little bit more color and add it to this petal. Except when I did that, I lost the sense of light. So I'm going to come back and reinstate some of it. And then maybe just add a few more colorful petals inside. So what I find in my own experience of painting many roses, it's so easy to get seduced by all these numerous petals and start painting petal after petal. But really, when you look at the rose, we see that the light connects all the light petals together. That maybe what separates them is just a little indication of a cast shadow here and there. Or what makes them look petally is not actually what happens so much inside, but the outer edges of the rose. So I think in this approach, see, I'm just dividing, putting a few cast shadows across, and then I'm gonna take some of my light and then get a few petals coming around, and with just a little bit more work, it will start gaining that look of a fuller flower with multi-petals. Now I'm gonna put light with just a little bit of phthalo blue to make it even cooler, and I'll tuck that light behind that petal and show the edge of that petal in front. So we have a hard edge here and a lost edge here, and then maybe we'll come back and do a little bit more reflective light. All is adjusting. Each brushstroke leads to a different relationship. Just put a few little details of the small edge. You can use a palette knife for smaller details, or you can use your brush by scooping the paint and then making a brush stroke. And if that brush stroke got a little bit too wide, that's okay. Then we'll pull that little light down, and it's actually going to be even more useful. Or you can do that with a palette knife by scooping a little bit of a paint. And here I want to create that little bit of a bigger edge of the petal that is turning. Add a little bit more paint in the middle. And then as you gave yourself a piece of paint, then you can maneuver it down or up. Now when you have that paint in, you can move it in the right place. Maybe a little bit down, tilt. And if you need more brightness to that petal, you can try to lay in another brush stroke on top. That's good. And then pick up that paint and move that way. More reflective light here. As long as we didn't lose the separation of the shadow. And the next thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of cadmium yellow into my raw umber, into the red, create a warm shadow, and then see if I can reinforce some of these darker shadows. And again, maybe readjust the position of that petal and paint just the space that these petals are going to take. Take a little bit more yellow. Just get a warmer, nicer feel for it. Come inside of the rose. Come inside of that cast shadow from the bowl of the rose into this petal. and then bring a little bit of that color inside of this petal that has more yellow in. I'm ready to paint my background and use a background to shape the rest of the petals. In my reference, I have a lighter background, but I think what I'm going to do is create a darker background with a combination of raw umber and phthalo green. And I'm going to use a little bit of medium, and I want to apply it in a kind of a very painterly way, not necessarily a flat way. And what I'm going to do is maybe just make some brush strokes like this to keep it even more playful and painterly. And then next to the rose, I'm going to slow down the activity of my brushstroke, and I'm going to use my background to cut into the shapes and create a separation of petals. Like that, you could see that, get that edge, define the edge of the back petal, running out of the paint, just refill. It doesn't matter if it's completely the same color. Background should not be even, should not be one color. It can slightly change and vary the temperature or the value. But again, I'm going to use this background to maybe change a little bit of the shape, give it a tiny wave. And this is the interesting place. This is where I would come and start creating the smaller petals, and then a petal that is dropped down. So this we decide will be negative space. Again, my background is very close to the value of my vase, so we'll see if it works. There's enough color difference to be okay, but maybe I will use more light on that side to define the shape of the vase. I can use maybe yellow ochre to create more light. Just a little bit more saturation. And on the back of the vase. Now, when I paint the background, in some places it's good to enter the vase with the background, finding the places where the background can merge into the vase, and then pass a little bit of a background through the shoulders. That's also a good space to do that, because the background is not just a piece of space, it's a air. So the air passing through the shoulders, and then just get a little bit more painterly on the edges, maybe not cover everything. So most likely I'm gonna repaint this background and adjust it to the finish. I'm gonna change my ideas anyway. So right now I really want to get a little bit of a contrast and a little bit of light for my table, just merging into my background, losing its edge. And then I'm gonna take the color of the table and I'm gonna allow a little bit of that light behind the light of the rose. And that's gonna move that space further, as well as it's gonna soften that edge a little bit without really softening. And now you can see how some of this can enter my initial brush strokes and carve out petals, even in a way where I can put a little bit of this background into my light and come inside and make a small brush stroke of it inside. Like that, I can use the same background air coming through this petal also a little bit as a transition between the light and shadow. So always thinking about integrating your background into your objects, into your painting. So you're not thinking of one as separate from another. And so here I'll add a little bit more of a cadmium yellow and make that petal that's falling out, redefine the shape. I'll take a little bit more background, cut in,